Meeting is now streaming live.
Love that for us.
However, Lucas, we appear to have lost you. You've frozen.
Ruh-roh. Okay, I've just got a notification saying that we're live, so that's a good start.
We're live, but Lucas is frozen.
Yeah, Lucas is very frozen.
You're frozen and you're making robot noises, Lucas.
Yeah. Shall I? Yep. Oh no, he's dropped out.
Yep, he'll be back.
Yeah, I'll readmit him when I can. So this is live. I can't see us, but that's probably fine.
The joys of technology.
It says we're live, so I'm going to go ahead and trust that.
Someone will probably message me if we're not, or something's going on. Yeah, I always blame my complete technophobia on my age, but it's really nice to see young people who have some fun and games with tech as well.
I'm just not a computer gay. Those talents are not mine.
You're artistic, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, so
you want to start?
Yes, I'll do my little beginning spiel that I've written. Let's go. Hi everyone. This is our first event of LGBT plus History Month 2021, and we have Lisa Power with us. Lisa is a seasoned activist and has done some fantastic things over the years, including vital work with leading UK HIV charity, the Terence Higgins Trust, being the first out LGBT person to speak about our rights in front of the United Nations, and being a founder of Stonewall UK. We're very lucky to have her with us, and I hope you enjoy this little Q&A from myself and Lucas, who I will currently readmit to the Zoom.
Come back, Lucas, all is forgiven.
We might get Lucas back. Hello?
Yes.
Hello. You're back.
Okay.
Hello.
Ah, good.
Lucas has chronic Wi-Fi difficulties.
You make it sound like a condition.
It really is.
So let's get started, shall we? Lisa, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and your work?
I'm Lisa Power, and I usually say I'm a dyke who's been around for donkey's years. And I came out in 1975, 1976. I've just been talking before this meeting. I was talking with Dr. Darrell Leeworthy about Cardiff in the mid-70s and the way that there was a Gay Liberation Front wing, and there was a campaign for homosexual equality wing, and the Gay Liberation Front was the revolutionaries, and the campaign for equality was, as he put it, the Homophile Association, mostly nice young men and a few women, and it just took me straight back to the mid-70s in Lancaster, which is where I came out in the north of England, where we only had one group because there weren't enough of us to have a split. So we had one group, and we used to get the Campaign for Homosexual Equality newsletter and the Gay Liberation Front newsletter, and read them out both to everybody at the meetings. And the first meeting that I went to, I turned up and they had a special speaker that week, and it was the national convener of the Campaign for Homosexual Equality. And he walked in, and he was someone I'd last seen in a theatre group in Croydon 5 years before, where he had been firmly saying that he wasn't homosexual. It was like, I think you are. So that was a bit of a shock to him, and I just thought it was very funny.
So and he was then a guest speaker.
Yeah. It was like, hi.
Gross.
Other end of the country and all, but
yeah.
So you know, I went to that meeting, and I was sort of vaguely saying I was an ally in those days. And they said, do you want to come along to this demonstration about outside British home stores? was BHS by the time it closed down a year or two ago. But at that point, British Home Stores had sacked a trainee manager in Brighton because he'd appeared on the first ever gay magazine programme on British television, talking about being gay. And his name was Tony Whitehead, and he went on to help found the Terry Higgins Trust, which became the Terence Higgins Trust. So made an activist of him, it did.
Yeah.
But there were little demonstrations all over the country from gay activists in the mid-70s protesting his sacking, and I went along just to be friendly and helpful after this first meeting I'd been to, demonstration on the Saturday outside BHS. So I went along, and somebody gave me their placard to hold while they went to the loo, and I did not see the photographer from the local newspaper. And the next thing I knew, I was all over the local newspaper.
Oh no!
With a placard saying BHS unfair to gays. And handing out leaflets in another picture as well.
Well, that's one way of doing it. Blimey.
All the neighbours knew before I did. So that was fine. So I just kind of relaxed into it at that point and thought, fine. And I also met a woman called Jill Posner, who, if you ever see those photos of feminist graffiti that were taken in the 80s, it's likely that it's a Jill Posner photograph. She did a lot of feminist photography. She was one of the early people in the Reclaim the Night marches, but then she went on to be a sex positive lesbian and she moved to San Francisco and joined the collective of On Our Backs, which was a lesbian, well, basically lesbian porn, which was in the 90s. She's been there ever since, but she at that point was a stage manager for a theatre company, Timber Theatre Company. She was the only white person, I think, in the company. And she came down, they did a production of an Athol Fugard play, whose name I've forgotten. And I was one of the extras for it. And I remember she took me to one side and said, oh, for God's sake, pull yourself together, you're a lesbian. She was right. I mean, that was pretty good going because, you know, I was engaged to the manager of the Morecambe Co-op at the time. Came out spectacularly. Poor man, he was lovely, the manager of the Morecambe Co-op. He did not deserve the pain in the arse that I was at that time. But he ended up being happily married and living in Morecambe. So that was fine. So I came out, had a good time in Lancaster, helping with the Whole Food Co-op, helping with the queer disco that we had once a week called Quack Disco, which everybody went to. Gay, straight, yes, we did. We had both. In those days, we made a distinction. We had transsexual people who came, which is what we say usually about trans now, but we also had transvestite people who came who just cross-dressed. And even the local Hells Angels came to the disco on Friday night in the Catholic club because it was the only place that would have us because it was more interested in money than morality, which I thought was quite funny. And we just had this once a week gay disco that everybody went to. So when I moved down to London a couple of years later and found that everything was completely segregated and the lesbians were all separatists and the gay men were all in different tribes, I found that really weird, and I'm much happier with life as it is now, actually. Going around at the start of the 80s, and it got more and more rigid during the 80s and 90s. You could either be gay or lesbian and gay, as we came to say, or you could be straight, and that was it. You had to make a choice. You basically had to decide which side of the fence you were on. And if you were one of the multitude of people who didn't quite fit into one or the other, it depended whether you were more interested in respectability or more interested in fun, to be honest. You know, that was the way it was. And I can remember arguing that basically we should all stick together and we should all call ourselves gay because it didn't matter. When it came down to it, the people who hated us hated all of us. And they didn't mind what flavour of queer we were. That, you know, they put us all up against the wall and shoot us anyway. So why didn't we all stick together in the first place? Which fell on very stony ground in the 80s and the 90s.
That's really interesting because it probably wouldn't now.
Well, no, it's much more now. I mean, I kind of feel I might be pensionable age, but I've kind of grown into my people, which is really weird. But, you know, I stuck with it. I defined as a lesbian, got into a bit of trouble now and again over that. We might talk about that later, or we might not. But, you know, I was never very good. It didn't matter what parameters you gave me. I was always one for seeing if I could poke my way through the lines. It's just one of those things. And I didn't want to be a separatist. I wanted to work across the boundaries. And in the 80s, that meant working across the boundaries with gay men. So I was the second lesbian to rejoin London Gay Switchboard, as it was then, Switchboard LGBT as it is now. I was the second woman and the second lesbian to rejoin them after all the lesbians had walked out to form Lesbian Line. So there was me and about 70 gay men and a very nice woman who said that feminism gave lesbians a bad name. So she was never going to be my best mate. I was definitely the first feminist lesbian back in. And it was great. And, you know, I made a career out of being a token lesbian when you come down to it.
That's pretty strong, to be fair.
You know, I think it's fine to be, somebody's got to be a token, because otherwise, how do you kick the door open? The question is, are you the kind of token who wants to be there to kick the door open? Or are you the kind of token who's there to grab some privilege and hold it for yourself? And that's the question you have to ask about anybody in that setting. From the point of view of the person who's being asked to be a token, what's their motivation? And from the point of view of the people who want a token, how are they going to accommodate that token? How are they going to listen to them? And Switchboard was fascinating because it did have quite a wide spectrum of gay men on it. It didn't have anybody openly conservative. I mean, in those days, I do have a friend from those days who says it was more difficult to be a conservative in the gay movement than to be a gay in the Conservatives even then. It was certainly not acceptable on Switchboard, but it was incredible. It was like finishing school for lesbians and gay men. It was amazing. It was 24 hours a day, and the phones went pretty much. I mean, the first few years I was there, you would get calls most of the night, but you could snatch a few hours sleep. But then when HIV hit, when AIDS hit, and the government put our phone number on a leaflet that went out to every household in the country, the phones went berserk, and that was it. 24 hours a day, you put the phone down, it rang. And that was partly calls about AIDS, but a lot of it was other calls, because I'm actually now friends with Norman Fowler, which it does my head in a bit, but he's lovely now. He's the Lord Speaker of the House of Lords. He's got a rainbow flag on his desk, and he's utterly supportive of LGBT people, of sex workers, of drug users, all the people who need support around AIDS. He's really helpful with. But I did say to him a couple of years ago, Norman, when you put that leaflet out, did you ever think that you weren't just telling every household in the country phone numbers that they could ring if they wanted to talk about AIDS, but one of those phone numbers on there went to every household in the country and it told them who to ring about being gay? And he said, I said, did you realize you probably helped more people come out in the mid-80s than any other single impetus? He was just like, really? But he didn't mean to at the time. But we just got loads and loads of calls as a result of that. Some of them, because the Don't Die of Ignorance leaflet talked about homosexuals, we did get quite a lot of calls from puzzled lesbians going, does this mean me? Because everything was very euphemistic, and they didn't talk much about sexual practices or anything in them. So we got a lot of calls from people who said, yeah, this leaflet is all very well, but what does it really mean? We got an enormous number of calls from people who were worried well. People who were just made up the most fantastical possible ways that they might get HIV because they wanted something to worry about, who I think we weren't as sympathetic to as we could have been. And a lot of really genuine calls. And I was on Switchboard throughout the 80s and into the 90s till the mid 90s, which is part of how I ended up being the fact checker on It's a Sin. Because when Russell decided to do the series, he talked to a lot of people, but he kind of knew me from several different directions. It was a bit weird because for a while he lived in the same block as me in Cardiff. We both lived in what was jocularly known as Who Towers, along with John Barrowman and David Tennant and all kinds of other people, which was just really weird in the lift, frankly. So he kind of vaguely knew me as a neighbour. And then he also knew me because for History Month, a couple of years ago, I organised an event called Who's Queer Now, about all the LGBT aspects of Doctor Who.
Love that.
And Russell came partly because I'd managed to get hold of a guy called Waris Hussein, who was the first ever director on Doctor Who, and who was gay and Asian.
Was he gay?
Yes, in the 1960s. He was a gay man in the 1960s working at the BBC. It was illegal.
Oh my goodness, I didn't know that.
And he was just so chuffed to be invited. I knew him through
That's so cool.
one of the other Stonewall founders, Fee Cunningham-Reid, who knew him, and she invited me to dinner with him. And I invited him to come down and do this event. And he was just utterly chuffed to be asked about the gay stuff. So he said, nobody ever asked me about the gay stuff. They think I'm too old to be gay.
Oh, that's so cute. Up,
I mean, he must have been late 70s or around 80, and he turned up head to foot in leather to the event. He was so chuffed. Admittedly, very expensive, very soft leather, but nevertheless, towing someone who had obviously been a toy boy quite a long time ago.
That is incredible.
So I knew Russell from that. You know, he'd done that day for us. And
was that recorded? I want to see that event.
There are a couple of videos from it on the Pride Cymru YouTube.
Wow. Okay,
page.
Well,
Unfortunately, the person who videoed most of it made it so complex that a couple of the best panels had never been screened because we never got the footage back off him, and that was a real pity because it was a hoot. It was a hell of a day. I co-compared with Dr. Beverly Ballcrusher, who came in a TARDIS dress.
Oh my goodness. This gets better and better.
We had Bethany Black, we had Gareth David Lloyd, who played Yanto. We had all kinds of people there. And I got a video message congratulating us off Captain John, James Masters, who sent it over from America, because I'd worked with him on a couple of other things, which we won't go into here, because that's a real sidetrack. But so when Russell went to Terence Higgins Trust and said, who have you got from the 80s who can talk to me about the 80s? The fundraising team was sensible enough to serve me up to him, and he just went, oh my God, you? So I was one of a lot of people that he talked to. He talked to most of the people who founded the Terence Higgins Trust. He talked to all kinds of doctors and nurses and early activists, and I opened my address book for him, and I'm sure other people did too. And then when it came to do the series, I was just so chuffed that I was approached by the script editor, who said, Russell says you know lots of things, most of them fairly random, but I didn't tell her that. Would you like to do some work for the show? And I was just like, oh. And then they told me I was going to get a credit on it, and I was just so mad. I mean, it was better than going to the Palace for a gong. It really was. It's kind of like the thing I am. I mean, I've done all those other things. I've stood up at the UN. I've done all that stuff. I am proudest of the fact that I had something to do with It's a Sin, because it's just incredible. Have you watched it? Have you both seen it?
It's so good. Yes. Yeah, I've seen it. It was really funny to see your name as well on the credits. Like, oh.
Well, I love where they put me as well. So when people say, oh, where are you in it? I go, I'm underneath the intimacy coordinator, dear. Because I am. But really, people have made a fuss of me because I did that, but I had a tiny part to play. There were dozens of people who helped Russell, and he was alive then himself as well. So he had all his own memories, and Jill is based on a mate of his. It's very funny. People have been saying to me, oh, is Jill a bit based on you? And it's like, fuck off, just because I'm fat. You think, that must be me. I'm furious nobody thinks that the solicitor's based on me, because she's wow.
Yeah, she's awesome.
And she is a lesbian. She's written as a lesbian. And there's a lot of people saying there are no lesbians in this. Well, there's 3 actually. She's a lesbian, and she was written as a lesbian character. One of the nurses was written as a lesbian, and excuse me, if that's not a butch haircut, what is? I can't remember the 3rd person, but there are 3 parts in it which were written as lesbian. But you're not hit over the head with the lesbians, and it's a story about gay men, and that's fair enough. But I mean, from what I knew of it, which was not enormous, I mean, I knew they weren't telling anyone the whole story, and I think that's quite right, because somebody could have spoiled it. But I knew what I'd been asked to fact check. I knew bits of the scripts that had been checked with me for whether they made sense in the context. And I knew that people of my generation would, anyone who'd had anything to do with HIV, I knew it was going to be a big deal, because we've never had something like that for the UK. It's all American stuff. And before it came out, everyone was going, oh, it's going to be like Pose. Well, it isn't.
It's not, no.
At all, because it's less glossy. I mean, I was in New York at the time that the first series of Pose is set, and where are the cockroaches? I'm sorry, you know, it's just so glossy. But
it is a cracking show, though.
Oh yeah, no, it's a great show, but it's still escapist, despite the parts of it and the truth of a lot of it. It's still escapist. Whereas I think Russell's is just, I mean, people of my generation who knew that have been astounded. A friend said to me this morning on Messenger, I feel like Russell just read my diaries for those years.
Yeah, you feel seen.
Yeah, and when I saw it, the party stuff, I was just like, my God, we had parties like that. That was my house party. I lived in Islington. We all paid £2 a week each for short life housing. I thought it was so funny when everybody was so shocked about £20 a week for the each person's rent in their flat, and I was like, that's quite a lot of money for them. I was paying £2. We lived in basically semi-derelict houses licensed to us by Islington Council. And when they wanted them back for renovation, we had to move out. And you can judge the state of them by the first one that I lived in. I thought that the floor was a bit sloping. And the week after we moved out, they started to try and put scaffolding up, and the whole of the back wall fell off. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was a good deal. We only paid £2 a week for a roof over our head, and there was running water and electricity, and you know, nobody gave us grief for that. We didn't have to break the law. Islington had a house that was kept unvandalized until they wanted it back. So it was a great system. So, you know, that was our life, but I wasn't sure how people like you would take it, younger people who hadn't lived through it. What would you think? Would you just think, oh my God, this is a bunch of old queens whining about an illness, and it's only just like COVID or whatever? I mean, what's the reactions of your friends been like?
Certainly not. A couple of my friends haven't seen it because, you know, everything's a bit rubbish at the moment, and they want things to watch that aren't going to make them sad.
Well, let's talk about what our escapist joys are on television in a bit. But yeah, but some people have watched it.
Yes. An interesting reaction I've had as well is from one of my straight friends who absolutely loved it because I'm queer. I've done like all sorts of research into AIDS and all that sort of stuff, like just independently. But for him, it was like a crash course in this sort of element of the 80s and 90s that obviously he has never been taught in like school or whatever. And I think, cool, you know, what a good like crash course in some, because it's very emotionally grounded, the series. Yeah. You know, it's not just like a list of statistics and I don't know, pharmaceutical words and stuff like that. And it makes you fall in love with the characters, and it's beautiful, and it makes you cry, but like in a really cathartic way. And I think that it's so well done from head to toe. Yeah, I mean,
it is spectacularly accurate, and everything that happens in it happened to people, either that Russell knew or that Russell talked to. I mean, there are bits of it that I recognise very, very well. The funeral scene, stuff like that. People freaking out about things. In case somebody is watching this and hasn't seen it all the way through and is doing the weekly watch, The episode this week, which is tomorrow night, is the one that broke me. I didn't realise, I think everybody who lived through that, who was within the people that either it was happening to or that were doing the help on places like Switchboard, we all carry some level of post-traumatic stress about it. But I thought that I was pretty Teflon. And I'd sat down, I'd advised about this I'd told Russell all these kinds of horror stories and it was fine. And then I sat down, I watched the third episode and I howled from somewhere deep inside me. And I realized that, I mean, for those of you who haven't gone through all of it, there's pretty much a death a week after every week. And the death in the third week is very close to how my co-secretary general at the International Lesbian and Gay Association died. And the person in the third week dies with, things, they go through things that he went through. And I just didn't realize how I had buried stuff about that, even though I'd been able to describe it to Russell as an incident. Seeing it on the television and seeing it with that particular character just completely did me in.
Yeah.
And I defy anyone not to cry at the end of the whole thing, on the end of the fifth episode. But yeah, it's a tough watch, but people are loving it. They're being fine with it being a tough watch mostly, which I find remarkable.
Yeah, because I think it's not suffering porn. It's not like it's.
Yeah, that's huge to me. Most of the American stuff is either good-looking young gay heroes being activists or people wasting away and looking wan. It just drives me around the bend.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And one of the characters, again, I won't spoil the ending, but said that the people will forget it was so much fun, like all of the dancing and the parties and the sex. And I thought, yeah, because this is a very true account. It's not suffering porn. It's not, you can tell that the people involved in writing it were gay and lived through it. Like I think you can usually tell with gay characters if they're written by a straight person anyway, but you can especially tell if it's like something AIDS based or anything like that. And I think it's very important it's a sin that it's so grounded in real experiences.
And also having the sense to cast young gay actors at the start of their careers. Almost all of the people who were in it have been doing things either for their favorite AIDS charity or for local gay groups, or they're all out there doing stuff. They're all putting up the Terence Higgins Trust testing week videos and things like that, and that's amazing. I always love radical actors anyway, and I think I've been a bit spoiled. I've known quite a lot of good activist actors, but it's just brilliant. It's radicalized all those young men.
Yeah.
And that's quite fun, and they seem a nice bunch too, actually, by and large. So that's how I ended up being involved in the periphery of It's a Sin, but I'm astounded. I'm knocked out by the way it's been received, and I have people who went through stuff in the 80s finally telling their stories on social media. Loads of people now coming forward and telling their stories, and I think the thing is that if you're young and LGBT, you probably haven't learned much at school, if anything, but you've probably seen, I don't know, in the gay press or online, you've seen people talk a little bit about Section 28 and stuff like that. So if you know anything about the 80s, you know about the nasty media and the stigmatizing of gays and the persecution around Section 28. And you may partly know of that because in context, it's so horribly similar to what's happening to trans people in this decade. But you don't know much about AIDS. It's kind of people.
It is a weird gap.
That's it. Yeah, because we were so traumatized, and that what you had at the start of the 80s was the first generation of young people who were growing up in a world where there was gay representation. It might not be brilliant, it might be, sort of stereotypical, but you knew that gays existed. It was possible to know that you weren't the only gay in the village. And then, you know, just as everybody started to flock to the big cities and disco culture and all of those lively things and have a wonderful time and, you know, lots of sex. And then this thing happens and it put it back by a good 20, 30 years. And we've never acknowledged that. I mean, I hadn't even really thought that through. It ate my career when you come down to it. I started professionally working in HIV as one of the first AIDS bureaucrats, to be honest, in the late 80s. I went to work for Hackney Council and then for the Association of London Authorities, and then for something called the Pan London Consortium, where I tried to coordinate 50 HIV charities, which was the very definition of herding cats, I'm telling you. Many of them could barely speak to each other, but it stood me in good stead. And then I ended up at Terence Higgins Trust for 17 years. So my working life got eaten by HIV fairly rapidly. And now I've retired and I'm desperately trying to get back to gay stuff, but I can't because there's still too much to do. We haven't killed off AIDS enough yet. And when I moved down to Cardiff, I desperately tried not to get involved in things for quite a long time. I didn't even get involved in that much gay stuff. And then I got dragged into Pride Cymru, by a historian called Narina Shopland. She dragged me into a previous organisation, which we will not speak of because it was pretty bad. But then she took me with her off to Pride and said, you should get this woman involved. And I started getting back involved in history stuff, and that was lovely. But things aren't brilliant in Wales around HIV. I mean, some things we've done brilliantly. You know, kudos to Vaughan Gething when he was presented with whether he should pay for PrEP, you know, PrEP, the pre-exposure prophylaxis, the pill that prevents people getting HIV. The relevant medicines committee in Wales told him not to put it on the NHS because they said it wasn't proven enough, which was nonsense. And Vaughan had the sense to listen to the people who were saying that's outdated advice, and he couldn't disrespect them by just putting it straight on the NHS. So what he did was he put it in a trial, but the trial was an open trial and anybody could go on the trial. And actually it was good to have a trial because it's shown us how it's working. So actually that was even better than just saying, oh, let people have it. So we've been really good on PrEP. If you are diagnosed with HIV in Cardiff and Vale, certainly, and I think in the rest of Wales as well, you will be put straight into a supportive environment with a hospital. You'll get treatment. That treatment will drive your virus down to undetectable within 6 months, and you'll live to a ripe old age, and you will be given, frankly, the best free healthcare in the world for your—
That's fantastic, isn't it?
That's all great. But at the other end of it, in Cardiff and Vale, we have a 62 or 64% rate of late diagnosis. That's being diagnosed after the virus is already damaging your body, after you might have had an AIDS diagnosis for something. That is literally 50% higher than the average across the UK. And what that tells us is that we have a substantial number of undiagnosed people with HIV who are unwittingly passing the virus on in the area. So we're not getting enough people tested. Once someone's tested, it's a great system, but we're not getting enough people tested. And one of the major reasons, I mean, there are two major reasons that we're not getting people tested. Three, I always do this. One, no, two, no, three. Firstly, until this year, you could only get tested on the NHS in a clinic, and there were very few of those clinics scattered across Wales. Not even every health board has a sexual health clinic. Powys doesn't have one at all. You actually have to go out of the area to get your sexual health dealt with, which is interesting. But in Cardiff and Vale, there is an excellent clinic at the Cardiff Royal Infirmary, and there is excellent ongoing care both at Cardiff Royal Infirmary and at the Heath. But you've got to go to a clinic until this year. You have got, lost my thread now. You've got to go to a clinic you have to have that sort of test. You can't do anything for yourself. And I totally lost my thread now. Give me a second. And the problem we have is there's no health promotion campaign about HIV for over a decade in Wales. And the last time we had a campaign, Public Health Wales did their best, but it was actually a campaign that just said AIDS affects everyone. It's not actually very helpful.
It doesn't really like give you any signposting of what you need to do to get tested or anything like that.
You have to go to a clinic, which is a stigmatized place because the clap clinic that people joke about. You've not had any messages about the fact that going to that clinic and finding out you have HIV will mean that you will save your life effectively.
Yeah.
And have a much better life, and you can live to old age, and you can have babies if you're a woman or a straight man or whoever wants to have babies these days. You know, you cannot pass the virus on to offspring or to your partner. So, you know, it's a much less fraught relationship with a regular partner or even with other partners. You know, it's hugely important to do that. And because we don't tell people that, they don't get tested. And because we don't tell everyone else that, there is huge stigma still in Wales. And it was a shock to me. I came from London and I'm HIV negative and straightforward about it. And in London, most of my friends who were HIV positive were straightforward about it. I mean, I know a lot of people aren't, but a lot of people were. And I came down to Cardiff and hardly anyone, this is the capital city of Wales. And I can count the number of people I know who are completely open about their HIV on the fingers of one hand. You know, and most of them are people who've either got nothing to lose or very robust characters. I mean, one of my best mates, Raheem, is an asylum seeker who's completely open about the fact that he's a gay man and has HIV. And he said that in a gay hustings meeting in the theatre at the theatre area, the auditorium at the museum a couple of years ago. And the audience gasped that somebody would say that they had HIV in front of an audience of people they didn't know. They actually gasped, you could hear it. Wow. And Raheem actually stopped what he was saying. He was like, what? And he, you know, I mean, it's very important for his asylum claim because he's well known in Morocco for being an HIV activist and a gay activist, and that's why he can't go back. Although the Home Office is trying very hard not to believe him about that. But you know, he says he's absolutely astounded. He knew more people who were out about their diagnosis in Morocco than here. And there are certainly not that many people open there. And it's because of the stigma. Even within the gay world, people are scared to say it because they think they'll never get laid again, basically. You know, or they're scared to say it because they have a long-term partner and their long-term partner is scared of what people will say. Or their family lives here and they're worried about their parents and the impact it will have on them and, you know, stuff like that. I mean, they've all got good reasons and nobody should ever be forced to come out, but we have to make it a more comfortable place for people to come out.
I think that It's a Sin has done a really good job on that, like in their promotions and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot going around, you know, giving voice to the fact that if you're undetectable, you're untransmissible.
Yeah,
that whole campaign and all of the actors and all that sort of stuff have been sharing that, and it's been on a footnote in all of like the reviews talking about it. So I think it's that this show has done a really positive thing, not only for, you know, telling the stories of people who need their stories told, but also for getting the message out that, hey, there's something we can do about this now.
They've cooperated very closely with people like the Terence Higgins Trust, and that's marvellous.
That's
and I
good.
think It's a Sin is part of a double whammy for Wales, in that now is the time to start talking about stigma really hard, because Gareth Thomas came out and, you know, said it had been hard, but he did it. And he is carrying on that campaign. He's contracted by one of the pharmaceutical companies that produces HIV treatments, and he does a lot of work about stigma for them. And then It's a Sin comes along with the most lovable Welsh character ever. or the two most lovable Welsh characters, because Colin's mum is lovable too.
Oh, she is.
You know, they're just absolutely great characters. And so that's produced more of a conversation as well. And what we've done, the reason we got stuck in and organised Fast Track Cardiff and Vale, which is the thing about Fast Track Cities, is it's not a new organisation as such. It's a coalition of existing organisations or people who care about HIV in the area and want to ensure that all of our agencies work together better. So you hear about Fast Track Cardiff and Vale quite a lot because we're quite noisy and we're quite good at social media, but we are not an organisation as such. We are a coalition, including Terence Higgins Trust, Cardiff Council, Cardiff and Vale Health Board, Vale Council, the university, Professor Kerry Hood and Dave Gillespie, who's one of her researchers, are centrally involved. Somebody from Public Health Wales, from their comms team, and Rahim from Glitter, the BAME group, and myself as just a natural interfering dyke. And it's all chaired by Pride Cymru. And Jan Molyneux, the chair of Pride, is also the chair of Fast Track. And we started November before last. We did some research and we said the three things that we need to work on in Cardiff are, one, the data, because data is very poor in Wales. It's very scattered. And we need to know who is getting HIV to know where we want to concentrate our efforts. And we need to know much more about all of that stuff. We know that we need to improve testing because of the late diagnosis rate. And because people are randomly turning up and going, I don't know how I got it. And, you know, we all know the ways in which you get it, so it should be more easily traceable than it is, but people are not testing until it's very late. And the third thing was stigma. It's very obvious. And there is research to show that there is worse stigma in Wales than in England, for example, overall. It's not a huge amount of data, but there is some. And Cardiff Uni are now doing some work for us on stigma. And particularly, they're going to do some work on stigma within healthcare services that aren't the HIV specialist services. And then the GPs in Butetown and Grangetown in Cardiff got together and they had a little bit of money spare left over last year. So they asked us if we'd like to do a self-testing pilot. And very shortly, if you have friends in Grangetown or Butetown, they will be ordered. All you need is a postcode in Grangetown and Butetown, and anybody who's registered with a doctor within Grangetown and Butetown will be notified of this, and we'll probably also make a fuss of it on our social media to try and reach people who may not be registered with a doctor. You're going to be able to order a free self-testing kit for HIV that you can do the test yourself in your own home and get an immediate result. Because in lockdown, again, Wales did the right thing. Other places, a lot of clinics in England and most of the clinics in Scotland closed down and they stopped testing for a while. In Wales, we pivoted to a postal testing system, which people have been telling us was impossible. But actually, once lockdown happened and we didn't want to stop testing people, Wales instigated pretty much on the spot a national postal testing system through one amazing woman called Zoe at Public Health Wales, who worked double shifts as a COVID marshal and to get this national testing programme up and running. And Fast Track Cardiff jumped in and she'd got it up and running, but there was no comms around it. So we shamelessly went out and did a load of comms for it. And they've actually ended up handing out twice as many test kits as they expected in the first 6 months.
That's so good, though.
They had to go back to the minister and say, excuse me,
some more money.
But these are important, and they've got a positivity rate. I mean, this is HIV, STIs and Hep C. They've got a positivity rate of 7%, which is whopping. You know, that's really important. They are finding new infections of all kinds.
Yeah.
People hadn't got diagnosed before because people like to test at home. They don't want to have to go into a clinic, even if they have to send the test back and wait for their result, as you do with the national scheme. They like it better. So this year we've been doing a lot of work on testing. next year, starting right when I say next year, it's this year. I haven't caught up yet. This is trouble with lockdown. We're actually working, we've got the money from another pharmaceutical company, Vive, to, oh no, it's the same as Gareth, but Gilead, a different pharmaceutical company, gave us money last year to start off. Vive have funded a 6-month Stigma Project, and we've just appointed a lovely worker called Carwyn, who's going to be coming around to places and talking to people about what we can do about stigma over the next 6 months. And we'd love to get Cardiff Students' Union involved.
Absolutely.
In a number of ways. We're going to be doing a positive images exhibition of at least 10 people who preferably who are in Wales or from Wales, if that's also the case, and a diverse group of people living with HIV and talking about what they've done and showing, you know, that you can lead a full life with HIV. It might sound a bit 101 to you, but actually a lot of people in Wales still need to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to be doing that. We're going to be producing a roadshow, which we'll be very happy to bring to universities and anywhere else that wants it. We're going to be taking it round, if we get to have Pride events this summer, we'll be taking it round the Pride events of Wales. We're producing some information materials that will go in GP surgeries, and just trying to normalise all of it. And this week, we've had a number of people who have come out of the woodwork and say, yeah, why don't we have a support group in Wales for people with HIV, run by people with HIV, for people with HIV. So, you know, Fast Track Cardiff and Vale, most of us are not positive and we shouldn't run that. But what we can do is support the people who are positive to get that going. So we're definitely going to be doing that. And
sounds really exciting.
It's but you know what, we're pushing at an open door. Lots of people want these things to happen. I'm still in the mindset sometimes of, oh, you know, we're going to have to lobby people to get this done. It's not true. I often say there's like an old Wales and a new Wales, and the old Wales is the sort of sucky teeth. Oh, we've never done it that way. Oh no, there's a set system for this, and we're not going to go outside it. And also, old Wales is the Wales that says, well, I don't care if it works in England, we're not going to do it, because everybody hates England. And fair enough, actually. Now I've been here for quite a long time, I completely understand why people hate England. But they have a few good ideas about HIV because they've got a lot more of it than we have. So that's the old Wales, but the new Wales is you. The new Wales is the people who are getting stuck into fast track, and the people who are opening doors for us, and people like the GP cluster in Bute Town and Grangetown, who just said, well, why hasn't there been a pilot about self-testing kits? Why don't we give you some money and we'll do it? New Wales is the woman at Public Health Wales who, when testing and clinics were going to close and we didn't know when they were going to open again, she said, well, we'll get that postal testing system up and running. And the doctors at Cardiff Royal Infirmary who said, well, if we can't see people face to face, let's start WhatsApping and Zooming everybody. And they now have virtual clinics all the time. And it's actually completely transformed the way they're working. And there will always be some people who haven't got that system, and you know, you have to go an extra mile for. But then you just have to think those things through. So that was one of the other things that Fast Track Cardiff did last year, was we realised that not everybody has a secure postal address that you can send a postal kit to. It may be that you're homeless. It may be that you're an asylum seeker in a house in multiple occupation and you don't want any unexplained parcels coming for you. It may be that you're living with your family and you don't want them to ask you what's in your mail. So we went out and we did a little bit of work with Llamai and with Oasis, and we want to extend that to other agencies in Cardiff and Vale who work with people with insecure home addresses, so that they can, you know, their service users can order the test with them. It can be delivered to their address. The service user can use it and send it back from their address and get the results back to their address.
Yeah, that's really good.
They can do it without their parents knowing, or without, you know, it will be a secure way to do it, and they'll actually get more support, because not everybody can do postal testing without help. but it's not hard to just remember those little bits and fill in the little
Yeah.
gaps. So that's what we've been up to, and we're about to start encouraging other cities in Wales to try and produce fast track. One of the problems we have is that fast track is essentially, it's a coalition between the local authority, the health authority, and the community sector. And the community sector in Wales is very poor for HIV and sexual health. I mean, literally, at the moment, THT have one person in Cardiff and Swansea, rattling between them. At the moment, she's locked down in Cardiff and trying to do what work she can online. But they've been trying to fill a post. If you know anyone who wants a development and policy job, developing services in Wales, THT clearly haven't yet actually put someone into that post. They're doing their best, but they can't, with the best will in the world. One or two people can't cover more than a bit of work in Cardiff and a bit of work in Swansea, and if you're lucky, a bit of work in Newport too. So we need to establish community people who care about HIV in each of those cities where we might want to put a fast track thing in, and we need to identify people like Elliot, who's the leader of Swansea Council, who comes from the queer community. He's one of the organisers of Swansea Pride. He will make sure that the community is involved. And that's kind of what we need to do. Maybe we need to talk to Owen Hercombe up in Bangor, who's one of the local politicians who's also openly queer. We need to find those people in the cities and make sure that they're involved from the start. Because it's not, that the whole point of this is it's a coalition and it's getting whoever's interested involved. And I'd really like to make sure that Cardiff University, it's not just the research department the clinical research department, who are brilliant and I love them to bits, but we also need a partnership with the students. We also need a partnership with other departments.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a couple of questions that people have submitted, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, here we go. Can you share your greatest challenge as an activist?
My greatest challenge as an activist is keeping a straight face when someone's being an idiot. Read everything on my face if I'm not careful. And I have been known to sit there like thunder when someone's saying really offensive things, which is why I quite like to do most of my activism these days on Twitter, where I can be deeply sarcastic, but hold my temper. My biggest challenge really sometimes is to try and remember the things that I did learn at Stonewall, that sometimes we have to do quite a lot of work with people who we don't see as our natural allies, because if we don't have allies through into all of those camps, we can't turn stuff around. So, last year when Liz Truss was being frankly a complete idiot about trans issues because she'd read some stuff and she'd been nabbed by a few of the anti-trans brigade, the fact that we had people like Crispin Blunt and Caroline Noakes and some of those other people who are Tories, not people I would spend much time with, but they're heroes for standing up for trans people in the Tory party and standing up against a government minister, even with the size of majority they've got at the moment, is quite hard, because the Tories have learned some very hard lessons recently, that if you try and cross Boris Johnson, you will be sacked straightforwardly. It's only the fact that he's not actually, he doesn't care at all about trans people either way, that he's not bothered if people, smack Liz Truss around a bit, frankly. Those people are our allies, and I have to remind myself of that, because I'm naturally the kind of person who says exactly what they think, and sometimes that's not the brightest strategy.
Yeah.
It's very liberating, it's lovely, but sometimes you have to have your eyes on the prize.
Yeah.
It's like Mark Thompson, who I'm doing a talk with tomorrow night for Queer Britain. I'm a trustee of Queer Britain as well, the museum project. And I'm doing a talk with him and Russell T Davies tomorrow night. And there've been a lot of people complaining about it's a sin. Oh, there's not enough about lesbians. They haven't understood this. They haven't understood that. Mark felt that they'd missed out. All of the music is white disco music. It's a brilliant mixed group of young people, but it's a white culture that they exist within in the show. But
Mhm.
instead of moaning about that, he went out and he did the Black Spotify list for What It's a Sin, and he collected all the music that he was listening to in black clubs and shebeens and black queer parties at that time, and put it out as It's a Sin, the Blacklist. And I said to him, you know, that's really good of you. And he just came up with a slogan, which I suspect a lot of people know, but I hadn't heard it. And he said, what he always says is, don't be bitter, be better. You know, don't whine, get going on it. And I always wear a little badge that says, don't mourn, organize. And of course, with AIDS, we had to mourn and organize. But it's really important to try and do those constructive things. So yeah, biggest challenge, being constructive and not just being spectacularly rude to people.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. We've got to wrap it up a bit.
Oh,
But
sorry, I've just talked too much. As
no,
ever.
don't you worry. This has been fantastic. I've got one more question from my heart. What is your favorite ice cream flavor?
My favorite ice cream flavor is rhubarb or possibly
Ooh.
pistachio. And it used to be bread and butter pudding, which is
As an
really
ice
rare to
cream?
find. It's basically honey and brown bread.
Huh.
The honey and brown bread ice cream, which is sometimes disguised as bread and butter pudding ice cream. Lovely bit of roughage with your ice cream. And frankly, anything that Sub-Zero make. They make rhubarb, they make gooseberry. They're the best ice cream in Wales, best ice cream in the universe.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming and talking to us. I'm going to end the live stream there. So
thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. And goodbye to everyone watching on the live stream.